time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
On a Thursday, and great to have you with us. Thank you, Chad Erickson. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes of this show. Noa Dalzell will join us in 10 minutes. Let's find out what's going on with the Celtics at the midway point of this NBA season. Going through a bit of a rough spell. Lost to the Raptors on Wednesday night. I want to ask a question. What if the NBA is broke, as so many people seem to think it is, how do we fix it? Adam Silver talked about it yesterday with Colin Cowherd. We'll have a little bit from that conversation, but also some thoughts of my own. On a night, by the way, where the Nets lost to the Clippers by 59 points in Los Angeles. Just want to put that out there. We'll get into that. Dennis Bernstein will join us. Fourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. Talk to him about what's going on in the NHL, taking stock in the league and what's going on there right now as well. Why I love cell phones. Mobile phones, mobile devices, whatever we call them these days. Whatever your choice of calling them is these days. I want to talk about that as well. But we start things out in the NFL. Sam Yarnell is here after a couple of days away. It's good you found your way back. I was wondering if you were going to be able to remember how to get on.
You see what it's Zoom like the call. Old fable, Jason. I left the breadcrumbs to Studio S2, and then when you texted me and said, "Hey, where you been?" I was like, "Oh, let me just turn around. Where am I?" And it was a trail of breadcrumbs led me right back to the studio.
I love it. We're happy to have you back. You're always welcome in our humble domain. All right, Sam, let's ask a question as we get ready. We're just a couple days away from the NFL's Divisional Playoff weekend. 4 big games coming up this weekend. And the question on my mind today, where is the biggest chance for an upset? Where is our biggest shot? And I ask the question and I say, we take Ravens-Bills out of it because a 1.5-point line is not an upset. It is essentially a pick'em. It is a toss-up. So I ask you, Sam, when you look at this weekend's games, where do you see the biggest chance for an upset?
Jason, it's so hard for me to answer that question. Now, when I say that, you may be thinking, oh, he probably likes all the favorites. I mean, Kansas City, they're going to whoop on Houston. I mean, Detroit and Washington, what are we talking about here? We saw what that Detroit defense did last week. Seems like they figured it out, right? No. I can't pick one underdog. I like them all. Seriously. There is not an underdog on the board that I don't like, especially at some of the numbers that they're being offered at right now as we're sitting here on Thursday. It is very easy for me to see a world where 1, 2, or 3, all 3 of these massive underdogs win. This is the NFL playoffs. This is what you and I talk about so much during the regular season. It is a week-to-week league. And I tell you what, last week, a lot of these teams that are competing with the 1 seeds looked really, really good.
But I want to give our audience some guidance. I can't tell the audience because some people may not be able to spread it around to all 3 games. So if I gave you Jason Page money, which means you're making a pretty small wager, if I gave you Jason Page money and said, give me the one you like the most, I can't let you get away with just saying all 3. I can't do it. Give me one.
It's the Rams. It's got to be the Rams.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that front 7 showed you last week that they are unbelievably talented, right? And I think all the questions that we had about this team coming into the season, they weren't about the offense. We knew that offense could produce whether or not they had their full contingent of weapons as long as Matt Stafford was under center. It was about the defense and the youth of that team. The Rams are one of the youngest teams in the NFL. That defense is the cheapest defense in the NFL. And look at how they performed last week. This is a team that has made themselves so well-rounded throughout the course of the season that I think they're able to hang with anybody. And the Philadelphia Eagles team, quite frankly, they're not as multidimensional as they need to be to win a championship, right? Their quarterback play, while at points in his career has been tremendous, this season, quite frankly, hasn't been up to par. And at the end of the day, if you're telling me to put Jason Page money on any of these underdogs, it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hate to be boring, but that's kind of when I look at them all and my eyes start to zero in on one versus any other, it's the Rams getting 6.5. And by the way, as far as the spreads go, as far as these lines go, that number for the Rams, I wish it was just a half point or a point higher. I wish it was just a little higher. That 6.5, that touchdown, plus extra point, that gives me a little bit of pause. By the way, the stats on that game from a betting standpoint, 56% of the money when it comes to the spread is on the Eagles, according to FanDuel. 54% of the betting when it comes to the spread is on the Rams right now.
Right. So that's telling you that the public is liking the Rams because they've got more tickets on the Rams, but the big bettors are liking the Eagles more because the bigger value tickets and the more of the money is on the Eagles. What I will say is interesting just with regard to that getting the half point or full point. When we talk about gambling, that 7 is like the king of kings in terms of what we call key numbers.
Yep.
A great example of that, right? They'll offer the spread at any number right now for you if you want to look. But at that 6.5 for the Rams plus 6.5, you're laying minus 118. If you bump that up to 7.5, you lay minus 156. They understand how important that specific point between 6.5 and 7.5 is.
Yeah, they absolutely do. The lines as of right now, according to FanDuel, Houston getting 8.5 in Kansas City in the Saturday afternoon game. Commanders plus 9.5. We had Bram Weinstein on the show yesterday to talk about that game. As far as the stats on those other two games right now, 75% of the money when it comes to the spread is on Kansas City. 51% of the bets, though, are on Kansas City. Interesting to know.
I see. That's interesting. Yeah, it is. It's
a big split.
It is. Well, it is, but at the same time, it felt to me like the Texans were going to be a public darling this week. I'm surprised to see even the majority of the bets on Kansas City early.
Detroit, 73% of the money on the spread is on them, and 52% of the bets in that one. So that's where we are with those. I didn't reference Ravens and Bills because we were talking about potential underdogs, but just in case you're wondering, 52% of the money on the spread is on the Ravens. 53% of the bets are on Baltimore. So there you go. Look at him. He's all excited. Thursday edition of the show continues. Good to have you all with us. Do a couple of NBA segments. No, Kurt Heelan is not here, but Noa Dalzell is. She covers the Celtics, does a great job. Also covers the WNBA for SB Nation. Covers the Celtics for a couple of different outlets. CLNS, Celtics blog. She's got a podcast. All right, let's analyze where this Celtics team is midway through the season in defense of an NBA title. It was interesting. I was watching Joe Mazzulla in a press conference the other day in a game they won where he was getting peppered with questions. And he said something to the effect of, man, to have the record we have and have all these problems that the media sort of portrays us as having, is there something to be said for the media maybe being a little too hard on this team, considering they do have one of the best records in the league?
Yeah, there definitely is something to that. I think the frustration comes from the fact they started 16-3, so it's really been the last 6 weeks where they've been about a 500 team, and it's hard to cover a 500 team that's supposed to have, be the championship frontrunners, right? So to me, I understand both sides. I get Joe's frustration. He called it a morgue after the Pelicans win. He said it feels like a morgue in here. And it did. I think I went back and looked at the questions. Every single question was about something that went wrong, and they did win that game. But at the same time, they went back and lost to the Raptors last night. And if CJ McCollum makes a layup, they lose 2 consecutive games to 2 of the worst teams in the league record-wise. And so I understand both sides, but they definitely have not been playing like themselves. And I think as members of the media, we're just trying to figure out like what exactly is the problem and how do we talk about it effectively, because it's kind of confusing and we're supposed to have answers and we're supposed to be able to say like, this is what's going wrong or this is what's going wrong. But I'm really not sure exactly why they haven't been playing to the standard that we saw from them for really the last couple seasons and, through November. And then really it's just starting December, they've looked a little bit like a different team. Let
me posit a theory here. It's the middle of the NBA season. It's like the dog days of summer during baseball season. I think it's in a title defense year. While it's great, at the beginning of the season, they come out firing, showing we're going to defend our championship. It's a long season. Teams get bored during the regular season. We know this is going to be a top 2, top 3 at very worst team in the Eastern Conference. They're going to be able to win a championship from any of those slots ultimately. Couldn't it just be as simple as it's that midseason malaise?
Yeah, it could. And then in that case, it's like, it'll just end at a certain point. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 weeks they just started playing a lot better. And this was just a blip in time that cost them a little bit in the standings. So I think that's definitely one of the possibilities. Another possibility is that they're just like they're trying their best. Like, it's not that they're not trying, but they're just not, there's a couple of guys that are in individual slumps. And when 3 out of the 5 players on the floor don't have the same confidence that they normally do in their shot and in just their game overall, like, it's really hard to play the same level of team basketball. So, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think that they will turn it around. But it's definitely been different than any stretch of basketball we've seen from them over the last couple seasons.
Does it surprise you to see Porzingis, Kristaps Porzingis actually come out and say, things like no spirit, no personality, especially for a veteran guy? It kind of surprises.
He always calls it how it is. That's why he's the best. We love talking to him after wins or losses because he'll just say exactly what it is. And so it did look like they had no spirit and no personality, and he said it. And he also said there's nobody's pointing fingers and nobody's freaking out. And so he wasn't saying like we're a disaster, we don't know what to do with ourselves. But he described accurately what we saw last night, and I think that's why he connects with the fans in a certain way, is because he is so willing to be honest and open, and it just makes him more likable to a lot of people.
There's an obvious question here when you look at the number of threes this team takes per game. Is there a danger, is there a threat with the personality of this team being so three-point centric that it's something where, if they're not shooting it well, there isn't the plan B when they get to the postseason and play some of these great teams in a 7-game series?
Sure. I mean, any team in the NBA right now, if you can't hit your threes, you're not going to get very far, I don't think. Like, I think that's true for even teams that are less three-point centric. Like, it's just the numbers are the numbers, and that's why everybody is kind of leaning in the direction of shooting more threes. But I don't find the reason that they're struggling right now because they're not getting up enough threes, or like or they're getting up too many threes. Like, I find that discourse to be so limited. They got a lot of good looks yesterday, but also they got a lot of plays where they literally like passed off a guy's head and then somebody wasn't even looking. Like, they're just disjointed right now, and a lot of missed layups, missed dunks, missed free throws. They were 50% from the line last night. So I don't know. I think sometimes when they're struggling, it's easy to boil it down to like, oh, they're too reliant on the 3-point shooting. And maybe they are. Like, last year they shot 50, I think they were like around 500 when they shot below 35% from 3, and they're around that same number right now. But the reality is, like, they have a lot of good shooters, and basketball is like shooting also. And so they're going to have to figure it out. Like, I don't really think that like this is like they need to change their game plan or anything. They need to go back to what's worked for so long.
Is there a trade that makes sense for this team as we approach the deadline?
Probably. I honestly haven't been in the trade machines too much. I think they're going to try to get a rotation player that can be impactful and, play playoff minutes. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Obviously, that's the dream of any contenders to get to plus up in that way. But there have just been some guys that are effectively, it doesn't seem like there's much trust in them. Like, Xavier Tillman, Jaden Springer, those are the 2 guys they traded for last year in the deadline. And neither of those guys have played really any minutes this season. And so it does, I wouldn't be surprised if either of those guys got traded at the deadline. I do think they're going to try to do something. Brad Stevens said there's a risk in bringing back the exact same group because you don't have like some motivating, like energizing force in the locker room. Like it's the exact same group. You can deal with new problems from the previous season. And I think maybe just shaking things up would be beneficial, even though I think this group gets along great. Like I don't think this is like a personnel issue. I think they'll do something.
Real quick, I have 20 seconds. The biggest threat to them in the East, the only threat to them in the East, the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Well, I always think of it like when they're playing the way they're playing right now, like a lot of teams can be threats to them. And when they're at their best, I don't know that anybody can beat them. So it's less to me about the other teams and it's more about them and how they're able to play. But certainly right now, if I had to pick a team, like the Cavs have been just playing incredible basketball. And honestly, very reminiscent of Celtics basketball last season, where it just feels like a well-oiled machine where you have to be perfect if you're going to beat them because they know everybody's going to be, they have complete trust in one another. And it's almost like, just music watching them play. And so they're definitely number one to me right now in the East.
Noa Dalzell, she does a great job covering the Celtics. Good to talk to you. Let's do it again later in the season.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming back. More Sports Wrap on a Thursday. We take it to segment 3 on this Thursday edition of Sports Wrap. Coming up in 10 minutes, Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. Does a great job on all things hockey. We'll get his thoughts on where we are in this NHL season. But I want to stick on the NBA for a couple of minutes here. We had Noa Dalzell on to talk about the Celtics, talk about the league at large. But I think a fundamental question that a lot of people are starting to ask, and even the most, ardent fans of the NBA, such as myself, are starting to ask this question. Is the NBA broken? Is the NBA broken? And if it is, Sam Yarnell, how do we fix it? A lot of people point to the three-point line as being, sort of the bane of its existence right now. If you look at what's going on in the league, with the number of threes that are being taken on a game-by-game basis. I think the Celtics are jacking up like 45 threes a game. I mean, it's crazy when you look at the numbers. I'm kind of interested to get your thoughts. If you believe, one, that the NBA is broken, how do we fix it? I mean, the Nets lost by 59, and I get it. They're in tank mode to try and get Cooper Flag. But they lost by 59 last night to the Los Angeles Clippers at Intuit Dome. And some of these games have become unwatchable. And at a time where the league has just done a new media deal and is heading into a new media deal with Amazon and NBC as partners, I have to believe there's concern on both of those networks' parts that the product they're going to be getting starting next year, if it looks like this, it's not going to attract a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah, so I mean, to directly answer the question, right? Like, what is broken about it? It is what you mentioned, right? It's that they're taking more 3-pointers per game. The NBA across the board is this season than they ever have before, and quite frankly, it's not close. It's 2.5 more per game than the next closest season, which was not last year. It was 2021-22. Right? Last year, 3-pointers were 0.1 below that, right? So it is an increase that we're seeing across the board. And you look back since, and I hate to say this, but I really don't, because there is one person that I truly blame for the ruining of the NBA. You track it back to the beginning of the Steph Curry era. And when he started pulling out these magic shots from one step inside half court and making prayers to provide food for his family, that's when the NBA became, I'm serious. That's when the 3-pointers per game exceeded, Jason, like 23. Now we're at 37 in about a 10-year stretch. That's not normal. It's not natural. It's done irreparable damage to the sport, and it's why people like me don't watch it anymore.
I gave the Celtics a short shrift when it came to their 3 points attempted. They're shooting 49 a game. out of their 91 field goal attempts a game on average, 49 are behind the three-point line. And they're making, on average, 36%. I mean, that's a staggering number. What does Adam Silver want to do to fix it? If anything, is it on his radar? He talked about it with Colin Cowherd on The Herd yesterday on FS1. I'll get to that coming up in just a moment. But first, I got to talk about our friends at Credit Associates, of course. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head, trying to make monthly payments? There's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high payments, and high interest rates that keep you in debt for decades with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. Think about that for a second. Be the MVP of your household. Be the MVP of your finances. They're saving you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Take it from me. I've been in debt before. It is not fun, especially credit card debt. When I was younger, I had to deal with it. We all have. Find out how much you could save right now. Call 1-800-747-5362. Credit Associates, 1-800-747-5362. It's half-uary. Cut your debt by as much as half with Credit Associates, or just click the QR code below.
While you were talking about our lovely friends over at Credit Associates, I looked a little further into these numbers. So the first year that Steph Curry started actually shooting threes, right, more than 7 a game, was 2012, 2013. The year before that, I mentioned earlier, this year in 2025, we're up to 37.6 three-point attempts per game per team. The year before Steph Curry started chucking, the league averaged 18.4 per game. That's less than half, Jason Page. If you're going to look at me in the face and tell me that number 30 out in Golden State didn't do all of this, I'm sorry, but the facts disagree.
Here's what Adam Silver, when asked about Colin Cowherd, said about fixing the three-point problem.
I think we just got to be careful. Like, the one thing I want to do is, I don't want to sort of knee-jerk move the three-point line. We're sort of going through a process now, seeing how these players are adapting to the new rules and figuring out if whatever changes we should make. I mean, to be honest, I wish it were as simple as just moving the three-point line back, because then we would just do it. I mean, part of the concern from the basketball folks is that if you move the three-point line back, you'll end up sort of just clogging up, the sort of the area under the basket. And that's not such attractive basketball either. I think this is doable. I think by examining the game and sort of seeing where it's going, I mean, it frustrates me a little as well, because it's obviously you're representative of what a fair number of people are saying about the game. And I watch it night in, night out. And we're seeing some of the most incredible athleticism and skill in the history of this league.
Here's the problem. You don't know what's going to happen about the paint getting clogged up unless you move the three-point line back. And ultimately, that's where this is going anyway. So if we all know the end result of this conversation is they wind up moving the three-point line back, because there really is no other thing that they could do but to penalize teams by moving the three-point line back, I think they're still going to shoot it just as much.
Get rid of the three-point line altogether.
No.
We've done it before. Let's do it again.
No. Oh, my God. Perish the thought. Dennis Bernstein will join us to talk hockey next. He's a huge NBA fan, too. Let's talk some hockey on this Thursday edition of SportsWrap. It's been a couple of weeks since we hung out with our friend Dennis Bernstein. Does a great job. thefourthperiod.com. Get his thoughts on all things NHL. There he is. I actually watched some hockey last night, DB. I watched the Oilers Wild game. So I was able to actually take in and soak in some weeknight. I know.
Wow,
I was able
you came over to the dark side.
No, come on.
Encouraging.
I have to say, we were just talking about something you and I discussed at lunch, and it was the product, the struggling nature sort of the NBA product, and just how hard it could be to watch at times because it's just guys just jacking up threes at this insane rate. I mean, half of the Celtics shots this year, on average per game, are 3-point. More than half are 3-pointers, and it's sort of unwatchable right now. And Adam Silver was questioned about it, and we were talking about that. And I said, Dennis Bernstein's a huge NBA fan. He loves it. Exactly. It's exactly what I was joking around about.
Yeah, exactly why I don't watch it. Exactly. It would be like, Jason, if every shot in the NHL game was a slap shot from the blue line.
That's exactly what I was going to. And Colin Cowherd made the same point. He was like, if every play in the NFL was a bomb down the field, and it was incomplete, you'd get tired of it. And the NHL doesn't really have that problem. Just to kind of dovetail off what we were talking about in the NBA, the NHL product from a visual standpoint right now is as good as it gets.
Oh yeah, no question. Because younger, faster, more skilled players come in this league every season, right? And if you haven't watched this kid named Macklin Celebrini in San Jose,
run him up,
or Matai Mitchkov in Philadelphia, or the kid Cole Hudson now in Montreal, it just gets better and better. And the only limitation is it's not really a TV sport, right, Jason? I mean, even with HD and 4K and everything like that, but it absolutely is, I think, at the height of its popularity. I think it will continue to be popular because, again, this game's just going to get more skilled and better and faster.
Mentioned the Oilers, Connor McDavid moving into second place all time behind the great one, Wayne Gretzky. And obviously everything is in the shadow of Gretzky when you talk about the Oilers. But if there's one guy, throughout the time that you've been covering the game, I've been watching the game, that has sort of been able to peek his head out from that shadow, it really is Connor McDavid.
Yeah, because he does stuff that nobody else can do at speed with that skill. I've never seen it. Like, I've seen Bobby Orr, I've seen all the greats, Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, but the speed at which he does that, and the vision, and even last night, the goal, if you watched the entire game, the goal that he scored was from almost an impossible angle. There's probably 2 or 3 players that could thread the needle like a quarterback. Like, Jason, like we talk about other sports, like the NFL, there's maybe a handful of quarterbacks that can make a certain throw, the threaded needle on a 40-yard pass to the sideline. There's only a handful of players that can make that shot that went in the back of the net that sealed the game for the Edmonton Oilers. One of them is Connor McDavid. So if you watch him on TV, you have the opportunity in your city to come watch him. He may not play great every game, but he's one guy that when he gets the puck, everybody sits up and pays attention. I
got to get out to it. When next time he's in Vegas, I got to go see him play against the Golden Knights. Because I still haven't made it to a Vegas game, and I know, make a face. Yeah, I know,
that's a choice, Jason.
I agree.
Make the right choice.
I know. Speaking of the West, stay out there for a second. Winnipeg sort of went through a little bit of a lull, through midway through this first half of the season. Now you look at them 6-2-2 in their last 10, atop the Central, just above that Wild team that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look. There's going to be a 3-way dance for both the Central and the Pacific Division titles, right? There's not much separating these teams right now. Winnipeg's got a 5-point lead on Minnesota. They have a 6-point lead on Dallas, but Dallas has 2 games in hand. And don't forget Colorado, who's getting healthier and getting better. They solved their goaltending problem with Mackenzie Blackwood. It's going to be a 4-way dance. I think it'll be a 3-way dance in the Pacific, but Winnipeg could win it, but any of those teams could win it. And the question is, how do these teams match up against each other in the playoffs? Because remember, first round, Winnipeg did all those great things last year. They were one of the best defensive teams in the league. They gave up, I think, 2 or less goals in 33 straight games. And then they played Colorado, which was a terrible matchup. They went out in 5 because they couldn't play defense and couldn't get a save. So it's going to be really interesting because right now, most of the pieces are on the chessboard, Jason. I'd say maybe in the East, the wild card positions need to be. But like in the West, Like, the top 4 teams, and Pacific, the top 3 teams. So it's probably a battle for that second wild card. So it's all about positioning right now. But Winnipeg has had a great season. They're dangerous. They're deep. They have a great goaltender, a guy who's going to be, without question, win the Vezina, which is his best goaltender in the NHL award, in Connor Hellebuck. So they're very dangerous, and they could be the team that does represent the West ultimately in the Stanley Cup final.
I've got about a minute here. Give me a thought on the Capitals, who, look, through the Ovechkin injury, just kept plowing ahead. 6-1-3 in their last 10.
Yep. Still
atop the Metropolitan Division, and just no signs of slowing down here. If you're waiting for a lull, it's not coming.
Yeah. It was a very good start. Now it's a very good team. Won't say excellent because I have no idea what they'll do in the playoffs, Jason, because it's a new group of players, but it's the number one story without question. When you have the defending champs in the East and Toronto Maple Leafs and the Devils getting healthy and the Carolina Hurricanes, the best team is the Capitals, right, in the league. Like, that's a story. It's a great testament to what they did. It's the general manager, Patrick, was very aggressive in the offseason. They have a great coach in Carberry. And now with Ovi coming back, it's the number one story in the NHL right now.
Yeah, it really is. Dennis Bernstein, I ran out of time to talk about the Rangers being so bad. God, are they bad.
It's always time for that.
They are so bad. Them and the Penguins. Yeesh. Tough to watch these days. Always appreciate your time, my friend. We will catch up soon. Maybe we can get you back on next week and have a more extended conversation. Thank you, my friend.
Sounds great. Thanks for the time, Jason.
We're coming back on this Thursday edition of SportsWrap. Don't you go anywhere. Time for something to consider on this Thursday edition of SportsWrap. Coming up in 10 minutes, some odds and ends to wrap up the program. Sam Yarnell, something to consider. We played a clip from Adam Silver's conversation with Colin Cowherd from yesterday's show, and we played it in the segment where we were talking about trying to fix the NBA. And Colin Cowherd used to always say something interesting when I used to be friends with him. We don't talk much anymore, but he said cameras are idiot magnets. And that's very true. I mean, if you look at some of the fan behavior and some of the things we see on TV during games these days, you always kind of marvel at the way people act when they know a camera is on them, which is why it's hard to discern what's real and what's fake when you see people on camera, because people are inevitably going to act differently when there is a camera on them. And you see cameras everywhere. People at games, concerts, holding up their cell phones. And people always I hear some very, interesting people bring up the point. Wouldn't you just like to watch it with your own eyes? Like, why are you watching it through your phone when you have these things called your eyes? So it's always kind of interesting to hear people have that conversation. But I have come to the conclusion, we live in sort of a surveillance society. People don't like to admit it, but there's cameras everywhere in major cities, especially these days. There's traffic cams, there's cameras inside businesses, cameras on houses. There's no place to hide these days. And people will say that's a terrible thing. And I always say, well, it's only a terrible thing if you have something to hide. I have no problem. Other than somebody maybe catching me, with my pinky up my nose, you're really not going to see anything from me on a camera that's going to get me in trouble, so I don't care. There's one really good thing, though. No matter how you feel about cameras, there's one really good thing that they are good for, Sam Yarnell. And it's shaming bad behavior. Whether it's in an entertainment venue, whether it's on the street, whether it's somebody not putting the carriage back at the grocery store and leaving it in the parking space for you to have to get out and move it. There's some great TikToks on that, by the way. Farewell TikTok. You're gone in a few days. The one thing they're great for is shaming bad behavior at sporting events. And we are seeing it now more than ever, where we're seeing it in parking lots after games. If, fans are being unruly or getting into fights or swinging, throwing punches at people. And we saw it over this weekend with these Packer fans in Philadelphia attending the Eagles game. The Eagles would obviously win. And this one fan that berated this female Packers fan and her husband. And he repeatedly called her the C word. And it went viral. And Eagles fan Ryan Caldwell wound up losing his job as a project manager at BCT Partners after said video went viral. He apologized and said, people didn't see the whole video, but tried to say, it's unacceptable in the heat of the moment. I acted in a way that's not who I am. But the fact of the matter is, Brian Caldwell, it's exactly who you are. We just saw exactly who you are. That's the beauty of a camera in a moment where you don't know it's on you, Ryan Caldwell, is the fact that we found out exactly who you are. And now you can't go to any more football games. And now you lost your job. And you've embarrassed your family. And I, for one, I am here for it, Sam Yarnell.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to see the people who, take advantage of society get reprimanded for doing so. By the way, there's a course that you can take when you get on these ban lists.
Really?
Because, you get banned by the stadium, right?
Yeah.
There's a 4-hour long course that you can take to try and regain access, which is all about, acceptable conduct and how to treat others at these kinds of games. So very interesting that that this happens to so many people that they had to implement that. Listen. I think the comment about the idiot magnet is right. Like, these people are stupid. It is, I do choose to believe, potentially to my own demise. It is, to me, a small faction of humanity, right? I choose to believe that the, greater majority of that 70,000 people in that stadium were, normal rooting fans who root for their team and don't root against the other team, right? But at the end of the day, as my grandfather told me when I was very young, there are going to be, well, he used a different word, but we'll say there are going to be bad apples everywhere you go in life, right? Everywhere you turn, there's going to be someone who just isn't nice. And quite frankly, I do think that, like, this surveillance society, as you call it, I don't disagree with that at all. But I do think that it's, like, in some ways for the better. And I think it keeps us as members of that society more honest.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. And I'm glad this guy is getting his. Hopefully he's never allowed back in another stadium and learns his lesson as a result. Speaking of the NFL, big games this weekend. Who's going to be the biggest star? Who's going to be the MVP of the divisional round, if you will? You want to be the MVP of your finances? Credit Associates can help you do it. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about, and it's from our friends at Credit Associates. Go and check it out. It's Halfuary. Overcome that debt trap of multiple credit cards and high payments with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. What are you waiting for? Find out how much you can save. Call 1-800-747-5362 or just click the QR code below. We're coming back with odds and ends to wrap up Sports Wrap next. It's just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Thursday. A reminder on Friday's show, Robert Littall, Black Sports Online founder, for his weekly visit. Talk about some of the top stories of the week. NFL picks for the divisional round. I went 3-3, I think, last week. I don't know how Sam did. We'll ask him here in a second. But I would think I went 3-3, which has been the story of the season, really, when it comes to picking games. Oh my God. I was going to say the back page. Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast is available over on your favorite podcasting platform. Go and check that out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, you name it, we're on all of them. Go and check that out. Sports Wrap with Jason Page. Substack, go and subscribe. Great content is coming. Without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. How did you do, Sam?
I'm looking right now.
Are you?
So I definitely got the Steelers-Ravens game wrong, but I got the Chargers-Texans game right and the Bills-Broncos game right. Eagles-Packers, I believe I was on the Packers, so that's 2-2 right there. I was on the Commanders, that's a win. What did I pick in the Rams-Vikings game? That was the prime because we did it Monday on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Over.
I know I picked.
We were
the
both on the over. Yeah, so I went 3-3 too. Dang.
Yeah. That's what it is. That's been the story of our season. Odds and ends. Sadly, the end for Bob Uecker, who has passed away at the age of 90. That news breaking on Thursday morning. The longtime voice of the Milwaukee Brewers. Man, that guy hung in there. I mean, he did play-by-play right through this year. I mean, he was still on the mic calling games for this team, into his 9th decade, almost a century into his life. That guy hung in there as long as he could, and all he ever wanted was to see the Brewers win a World Series, and it never happened. He was one of the most engaging, delightful personalities that you will ever see in sports. Matter of fact, years ago, Sports Illustrated did a great piece on the Brewers when they were, in the midst of this run of making the playoffs, it felt like every year. And there's a picture of him in his 80s, just sitting by the pool with, a pair of swim trunks on and just hanging out by the pool. He was one of the all-time greats. Of course, people will remember him for his role in Major League, which was, if you've never seen the Major League movies, do yourself a favor, go and sit down, especially the first one. He was as good as it gets. Bob Uecker, rest in peace, passing away at the age of 90, Sam.
And he'll be up there on the Mount Rushmore of baseball broadcasting with Vin Scully and Harry Carey and all those guys. But, Bob Uecker was interesting because, as Jason and I know from talking to people around the sports world, there was never anyone you could ever find that would ever say a bad word about the guy. Obviously I never met him. I have never really worked anywhere near Milwaukee or close to the Brewers organization. But all the people who I've talked to who did meet him were always like, the first conversation you have with him, it's like you've known him for 20 years. So obviously one of the nicest guys in baseball, and baseball's just a little bit worse today because it doesn't have him anymore.
That is a great way of saying it. Baseball is definitely the lights shine a little less bright today for the game of baseball with the passing of Bob Uecker. Live Golf. How about this? Finalizes a deal to broadcast on Fox Sports. Look, they have hired Scott O'Neill to take over the role previously handled by Greg Norman, who is officially out of a job now. And Greg Norman had nothing but good things to say about Liv on his way out the door, despite the fact that he was kind of unceremoniously dismissed. But Scott O'Neill takes over the role previously held by one Greg Norman. But Live Golf to Fox Sports. And you know what? You have nothing to lose if you're Fox Sports. What are you wearing on that time? It's fine. I don't have an issue with it.
Congratulations, Live Golf. You finally got off the CW.
Hey, we're on some CW affiliates. Come on, man.
No. But for live sports, right? No. You're no longer in the company of.
Come on, the ACC is on CW.
That was where I was going. You're no longer in the company of ACC college football. Now you're in the company of NASCAR. Congratulations, Live Golf. You just keep inching your way closer and closer. But the fact of the matter is you aren't even going to do TGL numbers. Let's be honest. Because that place has been lighting up TV sets across the globe.
Isn't that true? They won't even do TGL numbers. TGL's averaging over 1 million viewers over their first 2 broadcasts, which have been blowouts, by the way. The numbers went up in week 2.
Max Holmes' Instagram caption?
Stop. Kevin Kießner should never be allowed on a golf course again, anywhere. Like, you're Tiger Woods. You can't do better than Kevin Kießner being on your team. Really? That's the best you can do? We said this on the show yesterday. You got to do better than Kevin Kiesner. Being
Max
on your
Homa
team.
said that they
What did he
performed
say?
so poorly, he was worried they were going to get kicked out of the league for getting beaten so bad.
I think next week is Rory McIlroy's team, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
And it'll still do better numbers than Liv.
Hashtag just saying. It's going to do it for us today. We're back tomorrow. Brand new sports wrap then. Thank you to Dennis Bernstein. Thank you, Noa Dalzell. Thank you to you, Sam Yarnell. We'll see you all back here for Sports Wrap on Friday. Bye!